Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, November 22nd, 2023, and today we're going to be answering three questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last 7 days. First up, what do Open Doors and SEVIS by the numbers data mean for our future in the United States? Second, how can universities in the Americas partner better? And third, is there a future for Chinese student recruitment? And we're going to answer these three questions and more today on the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. And thank you everybody for joining me. It's always a pleasure to come to you live on Wednesday afternoons in our traditional 1 p.m. slot Eastern Time to chat with you about the kinds of issues that are front and center in our minds as international educators in the United States. So we are coming off International Education Week last week, and this week being Thanksgiving week, a little bit shorter work week. Many of you are on holiday, so you'll be listening on repeat on podcast versions of this roundup or catching it when you're back in the office. So those of you who are able to make it live to the sessions today and every Wednesday, I always appreciate you joining in the conversation when and if you can. As we do each week, we take a look at the kinds of topics that are really front and center in our minds about our profession, our international education profession, because we oftentimes are on our campuses are outliers. We're not seen as always the first priority of institutions in terms of how we are talked about in the campus discourse, how we are thought about when it comes to prioritization for budget, when it comes to topics of institutional strategic planning. So our field can be fairly niche and feel very small in a lot of places, but when we come together at conferences and for International Education Week, we see our community really celebrating everything that we are as a profession in international education. And we can't do that without those students that we bring to campus, that we've sent abroad and who have come back, our faculty from abroad that we celebrate on our campuses. And that's something I think is really symptomatic of and symbolic of who we are as international educators. We celebrate our differences. We celebrate the many things that bring us together in our profession. And with our students that we recruit, with the faculty we interact with, with our administrators that are engaged and really want to highlight everything that we do with international education. For those of you who are on smaller campuses or one-person offices fighting the good fight, I know you have your hands full. You have a very full plate during International Education Week, and I can't imagine being able to arrange a slate of events to keep your campus engaged actively in what you're doing. But congratulations for getting this far. We're really excited to be chatting with you about this topic today. On first up, what do Open Doors and SEVIS numbers mean for the future? And as I've been sharing out in my posts this week, coming off our newsletter, obviously I always mention the newsletter at the top of the show because that newsletter, I'm proud to say, combined with the email version as well as the LinkedIn version, we now have over 1,500 subscribers that are getting the newsletter every week, and that's all the SMIE news fit to share. I've dropped the link to the SMIEconsulting.org website /subscribe so you can get the email version if you want. I'm also dropping the most recent LinkedIn version and email version of this week's newsletter so that you can follow along and see some of the stories that we're going to be covering. If you need those in your inbox on Monday, go to the website. If you'd much prefer to get it through LinkedIn, follow the link to the most recent week edition, and next week you'll get about 8:30 or so on Monday morning, you'll get Eastern Time, you'll get the link to that, or the notification that the latest newsletter is out. Because we do take the themes we cover here on Wednesday afternoons from those newsletters, from the themes of the stories that we see commonalities around, coalescing around certain issues. We then make 3 of those the topics of discussion for the Wednesday chats. So that first one, obviously, Open Doors is a huge event every year. It's become And this is someone coming from someone who used to work at IIE, who regularly went to the National Press Club for the live events. Obviously, the live events kind of stopped during COVID, and now everything's pre-recorded and webcast out to everybody. But the realities of this week, International Education Week, which took place last week, are always a signature time in the academic calendar for international educators, celebrating who we are. This International Education Week, for those who don't know, started in 2000. One of the last things that the Clinton administration did is to had a proclamation creating International Education Week that became a regular State Department program, highlighting everything that the U.S. government is doing to bring students to the United States and send our students abroad. And it's also celebrated around the world at U.S. consulates and embassies through Education USA offices, and celebrating who and what international education, international students, study abroad students bring to our country. So the newsletters are great ways to highlight that, highlight the news stories that we cover each week. And there's going to be three different things four things we'll highlight as part of this. First up, as our good friend Karen Fisher over at the Chronicle always does a great job around Open Doors to highlight the latest stats and facts. Her takes on that, the interviews with some of the key stakeholders. But Open Doors for me, and I'll be very honest with you, again, having worked at IIE for a number of years and really enjoyed those events at the National Press Club, the reality is the Open Doors data itself, the annual report that is produced through funding from the Department of State, really has become less useful as a tool for planning. It's planning for historical data and all that. That's great, but the reality is it's year-old data. What was reported last week is survey data that IIE collected from all, well, not all, and that's part of the problem. They don't get everybody in that mix. They don't, because every university, college that has international students is not required to fill that out, but it's a self-reporting tool that institutions complete to self-report their international students on campus. It's been heralded for many years, and I always called it when I was on campus back in the day, in the 90s and early 2000s. That was one of the Bibles, so that for international educators, for student recruiters, that you had to consult Open Doors to know where the students are that you should be going after, and developing plans around all of that. But the reality is, because it's year-old data, it's not very good in giving us a current sense of what's happening on the ground. They do have what they call a fall snapshot survey, which does have a survey from institutions, 600 plus institutions that host generally 57% of all international students enrolled in the U.S. They send out a survey that is filled out in the last couple of months and then is collated and reported as part of this Open Doors activity. That's probably the most relevant current situation on the ground that data, that day of the Open Doors report really provides us. It's not absolute because it's not a requirement that institutions fill these out. They send it out to over 2,200, I think, institutions, colleges, and universities that enroll international students, and then a subsection of that report back. There are over 6,000 plus institutions that can and do, well, not all do, but can accept international students that are not counted. Though they aren't going to be huge numbers, they can throw numbers off, and it also includes high schools that enroll students that are able to do that through SEVIS. Obviously, IIE's data is only post-secondary, IEP, intensive English programs, and OPT data across the board. So that's what we're looking at. So the data is painting the picture of what that looks like, what that really means. I've put the links to Karen's newsletter, to NAFSA's International Student Economic Value Tool, which is another kind of another companion to the Open Doors report. NAFSA always releases their economic value tool for international students in terms of their contributions, international students' contributions to the U.S. economy. And this year, first time since the pandemic. We're back over $40 billion in terms of the net economic impact of international students to our economies, our local economies, our state economies, our national economies. So it's always data that when I see those reports, and it's a huge lift for NAFSA to put this together, but they actually have it in this economic value tool. You can break it down, and you should, as institutions, using that tool to break it down, get your congressional level data down where you can indicate, you can find out, okay, for our congressional district, what value do international students bring? How many jobs are supported by the international students that enrolled in our congressional district? And that's something that for obviously all of us as international educators that are true, that are in it for the right reasons, in terms of the value that they bring to our campuses, in terms of cultural value, the education that those students receive that they can then take back to their home countries and leave with hopefully positive experiences and good views of the United States. All of that is what we all want. There are some who make decisions based solely on financials in terms of the economic impact. And for what I love about the economic value tool is it's not just tuition and housing dollars for our campuses. It's about the money that students spend in the community if they're in renting apartments or other things that beyond the campus proper, that their presence helps support jobs, and often jobs far beyond the international office on campuses. So this economic value tool has really helped, I think, for those institutions and international educators whose senior leadership only listen to dollars and cents. It's a great tool to have in your pocket as you make the conversation. You always want to make first and foremost the cultural value and the good that it generates for the university globally, all of those things. But also you want to have you be equipped with the right tools for the right fight, right? Or the right weapons for the right fight. And if you know you're talking to an audience that is all dollars and cents, bottom line people in terms of what their expectations are, how many students bring in, what kind of revenue do they generate, this is a great starting point for you to have that, and that gives that broader perspective on your entire as small as your entire congressional district. So definitely worth being equipped with that data. So being up above 40 billion again is a good sign. I think the high was 42.7 back in 2018 or 2018-19. That's kind of the watershed mark or high water mark for international students in the U.S. according to Open Doors data. Now, what to current numbers from SEVIS report? SEVIS did a report in October. And I've just collated those numbers and have all of that listed. And for all visa categories, there are now 1.22 million international students, FMJs F&Ms in the United States right now as of October. So the Open Doors data for last year still has us at let's get the glasses out, 1.057, so not even 1.1 million from the Open Doors numbers. So what this SEVIS by the numbers has is every international student that's in SEVIS, FM and Js, are recorded in SEVIS, so their data is captured on these tables. Now this has all tables, it's even broken down by state. It's just quite comprehensive. It doesn't break out FM and Js, but it does break out by male, female, associate, bachelor's, doctorate, flight school, high school, language training, master's, other vocational, primary, and secondary. And then each state is broken out. So let's take a look at what the numbers are from Open Doors, and in terms of top sending countries, and then from SEVIS by the numbers. So according to Open Doors, we're looking at China as of 22-23 at 289,526. That is in Open Doors as that's reporting last year's numbers, 22-23 academic year. China was still number one by about, we're looking at about 21,000 or so, according to Open Doors last year, 21,000. And we kind of figured that because SEVIS by the numbers was still reporting China last fall as just ahead of India. Now, for India was 268, China was at 289 in the data from last year's Open Doors, or the data from last year for this year's Open Doors report. Now, according to SEVIS by the numbers, for the report that came out in October, India had shot up from 268 from the Open Doors numbers to 338,000 active students in SEVIS now. China is down to 265, so they've basically switched places in the according to the, just looking at Open Doors from last year, China was at 289, and now SEVIS by the numbers shows 265 for China. So China's numbers overall are still dropping. That's a bit of a concern, but we'll talk a little bit later on about the future of the China market as well. But India has surpassed China by a good margin now, with a jump of over 50. Almost 60, well, yeah, 60 plus thousand in the last 60,000 in the last 70,000, excuse me, 70,000 in the last year, from Open Doors last year to SEVIS by the numbers October data. So out to round out the top five, we have after China and India in Open Doors, it was South Korea, Canada, Vietnam, and in the SEVIS by the numbers, we have after India first, China second, South Korea, Canada, and Brazil, followed by Vietnam. Now this is interesting because in the Open Doors numbers, the numbers from Vietnam are 21,900. According to SEVIS, the numbers for Vietnam are 26,000. For Brazil, the numbers are in Open, Brazil is actually ninth on the list at 16,000, and the numbers in SEVIS are double that, 32,000. So there's a big disconnect happening somewhere with Brazilians in the United States that are in SEVIS that are not in the Open Doors numbers. So I don't think Brazil jumped 16,000 in 1 year from Open Doors 2023 that just came out, the reports last year's numbers, to now 32,000. So interesting. Vietnam is sixth on the SEVIS by the numbers, followed by Nigeria and Taiwan. And on Open Doors, it's Vietnam, Taiwan, Nigeria, then Japan. And Japan on the is on Open Doors looking at 16,000, which was actually a big jump for them last year. Japan is showing at 17,900, so an increase over last year. Open Doors to SEVIS by the numbers, again, not really apples and apples, but that's there are some Bangladesh, Nepal, Colombia are ahead of Japan on on the SEVIS by the numbers list, but not again on the Open Doors list. So we have some really different numbers happening here. Saudi Arabian numbers continue to drop. They may have stabilized, which is a good news. 15,989 was Open Doors for 2022-23 academic year, and 15,965 currently from October. So Saudi Arabian numbers seem to have stabilized and may be heading back up in the near future. So Turkey is looking at 12,000 in SEVIS by the numbers, compared to 8,600 in Open Doors. So there's some big gaps with some of these major countries. So it'll be really interesting to drill a little deeper and find out where those pockets are. If they're all of a sudden coming in for the Brazilians, or coming more for high school now, that might be part of the reason. We'll see. We'll take a look at those numbers here. There's a lot of Brazilians in language training right now. That's according to SEVIS by the numbers, and they have over 10,000 in language training in the United States, according to the SEVIS by the numbers data. And that is by far the largest. Japan is next, or Colombia is next at 6,800, and then it goes down from there. So we do have some very much conflicting data going on from SEVIS by the numbers versus the IIE Open Doors. So it's always a little bit of a shell game, not necessarily a shell game, but certainly apples and oranges when you're looking at these different reports. But certainly there's a lot of value there in terms of numbers that for data nerds like me, and some that are even bigger data nerds than me, you get a lot of value out of these this data here. So really encourage you all to check those out. I'm also going to throw in the link for the IIE Fall Snapshot Survey, again, which talks about, which I mentioned earlier, talks about the those 600 or so colleges or universities that host about 57% of all international students, according to Open Doors data. That IIE fall snapshot survey is the most closest thing to current data that we can get, which did also show us pointing in the right direction. So what are the top level numbers? We talked about 12% was the year-on-year increase in total number of international students, which is hugely positive. We also saw for new international students, those numbers jumped 14% this fall, almost 300,000, which would be, I think it was second largest new international student intake ever. Second largest, increased 12% overall in 40 years. So we're really seeing numbers now happening for new international students coming in, overall numbers growing, moving in a very, very positive direction. Certainly by this time next year, I would assume we're going to be past our previous peak for our Open Doors numbers, at least, that came in 2018-19, as we look to have another solid year. And the SEVIS by the numbers certainly reflects the more accurate overall numbers, 2.2 or 1.22 million, as opposed to the Open Doors numbers that show 1.05 or 06. So good news all the way around in terms of numbers, and across the board, undergraduate, graduate, English language, and OPT all showing increases in the last year. So everything's moving in the right direction for the U.S. So we'll leave that one for now. That's a very long-winded discussion on Open Doors, but it's always a topic every year that does get a lot of traffic, a lot more stories this year about the numbers popping up in the news, and not just national news and international news, but also the state and local slices of that. So always good to see that getting coverage. Now let's move on to the second question, which is, how can universities in the Americas partner better? Now, this is a topic that for those who are regular listeners or watchers of our roundup on Wednesdays, the last one I did was actually 2 weeks ago. I didn't get to do it last week. I was out visiting my dad in Massachusetts on Cape Cod. But for the last Midweek Roundup I did was from the CAE conference in Las Vegas, which happened the week of November 6th, 7th, and 8th. So that event was for us, as I mentioned during that live I did from the exhibit floor at the convention in the Mirage Hotel in Las Vegas. That event was the first time this conference was held in the United States. It is a biennial conference, so every other year. First time it was in the U.S. Previous one was virtual in 2021 in Santiago, Chile, and before that was in Bogota, Colombia. The next one will be in San Jose, Costa Rica in 2 years' time, November 2025, and there was a large delegation from Costa Rica, from the universities there, to help promote that event and have a presence there. So we're very excited that we're the lucky U.S. city to host in Las Vegas, and what better place to hold a convention than in Las Vegas. There are so many conventions going on every week in Las Vegas. It's hard to get your heads around, and an amazing town to walk around as well. But for us to be able to host that, and for UNLV, who is relatively new to the international game, we've always had international students on campus, but up until 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, nothing intentional was being done to bring them in. We had a couple colleges, engineering and hospitality, were doing their own things, signing agreements. Hospitality always drew large numbers because it's the #1 program in the U.S., #1 or 2 in the world, depending on who you ask. And that always brought people in. Las Vegas always brings people in. It's a place, a city most people in the world know. And they make it to Las Vegas. They say, "Oh, that's an exciting destination. I'm going to go there." So we had more things preventing students from coming than actually encouraging them to, and we've now turned a lot of that around. We're still working on a lot of processes. It's always a work in process to refine and improve the way we do things, and that's at UNLV. That's part of my job as Director of Global Recruitment and Partnerships. I'll talk about the partnerships in a minute, but the recruitment side is a campus-wide approach. We have to end enrollment of those international students is a campus-wide approach, and making them successful graduates is a campus-wide initiative. We're all not on the same page yet. Everybody moves at their own pace and has different challenges and resources available to them. So we're trying to bring this whole mentality forward of making sure we're all on the same page as we look to bring more students from abroad to our campuses and send more of our students abroad as well. But the question of how can universities in the America partner better, this comes out of that conference, the CAE conference. So for us to be able to host this conference was really what I had been calling for on our campus, and to anyone who would listen, our coming out party to Latin America. Latin America obviously is a huge influence on the United States in terms of immigration over the last few decades, in terms of where we are in the southwest of the U.S. Nevada has huge immigrant populations from Latin America, and we have the Mexican consulate is in Las Vegas as well. They hosted a reception during the conference as well. So there are a lot of natural ties. We're a Hispanic serving institution, about 30% Hispanic. So we have a lot of reason to be engaging better with the Americas. There are universities that have been doing a lot better than us over the years. We are like I said, very new to partnerships in the Americas. We signed our first 3 university partnerships with institutions in Ecuador, in Colombia, and in Brazil during the conference at the opening reception, which we hosted on our campus. The conference itself happened at the Mirage Hotel, but we had the opening reception on campus for all 640 plus registrants from everywhere from Canada to the Caribbean to Chile, everywhere in between. Even had a delegation of 28 university representatives from China that were visiting for the conference that got to experience our campus as well. And before and after the conference, we were doing tours for potential partners, current partners, really giving them a sense of what UNLV is all about. A lot of people came away with really positive visits to campus, either for that reception or for tours that we did or meetings with faculty, deans, and all of that. There was a real sense of, oh my goodness, we're actually doing something right here at UNLV. People are responding to us. People are commenting on how well our campus looks, how eager we are to engage, and there's a huge to-do list that came out of that conference. And for my responsibilities as partnerships director, I now follow up with those folks that we met with, the ones that we've obviously signed the agreements with, making sure that those turn into productive, substantive agreements. So we partner better when we have opportunities to connect like this. And unfortunately, CAE is every other year event. So if you're not able to go to this one, you want to be in Costa Rica in 2 years' time if you're looking to engage better in the Americas. But for me, I know there are some of our peer institutions that have been very active in Latin America that we look up to and say, yeah, we need to be like that. They're peers for us domestically, but we're not in their league internationally yet. We hope to be someday, but we're not there yet. I look at some of them like UNT in Texas. Look at Arizona and Arizona State next door to us in Arizona. How well developed their partnership networks are in the region, and how lacking we are. So we're building the base now. And also into Mexico, into other Central American countries. Costa Rica is going to be a big one for us. So we're really taking advantage of these opportunities to reach out and find the common ground. Some of our programs are really highly sought after. Some are like business. They will only work with other, because our business program is AACSB accredited. We're only going to work with other institutions that are as well. So that's a little bit of a hamper. Not hamper, but it just redirects my energies as we look for potential partners in the region. Our engineering programs are extremely international and are very engaged in sustainability and environmental issues, and have some cutting-edge programs that really attract overseas students, and institutions are eager to partner with them. So hospitality, as I mentioned earlier, is a really big draw for a lot of institutions. So we find some natural affinities with and synergies with institutions in the region. So we're looking to help make some substantial progress in the next year when it comes to these partnerships with our partners to the south. and north. There's some Canadian institutions that we're certainly going to be working with as well. The Partners for the Americas, if you're familiar with that organization, it came out of the 100,000 Strong in the Americas program that the Obama administration launched to encourage more students to go study in Latin America from the U.S. and more Latin Americans to come and study in the U.S. universities. So there's a lot of positivity happening there. Very excited that we were able to be a part of that, host that conference. But we see quite a bit more to do. Now, let's wrap up today with a quick overview of what's happening in China. I mentioned earlier with the Open Doors data that the numbers have dropped again for China overall, but we're seeing some signs that things are turning around. One of those is related to just a general attitude coming out of China that they are eager to re-engage with us in a number of ways bilaterally on partnerships. So that I mentioned in June, we went there I went with my provost and one of our business professors. We signed agreements with 4 top universities in China to hopefully build some more substantial projects. Our provost is going to China for a week or so to follow up on some of the discussions we had when we were there in June. We are really all in for China in terms of engaging again and not letting any past challenges or political tensions really derail our efforts. So we're doing all we can to keep them up. The bright light I was talking about, if you read this University World News article, it's from a colleague who's been quite active. She regularly writes for University World News. Xiaofeng Wan is Associate Dean of Admissions and he is the Coordinator of International Recruitment at Amherst College in Massachusetts. So he regularly surveys counselors and agents in China, particularly parents as well. They are seeing, or his latest survey results are showing some fairly significant positives in terms of numbers. And this is the one caveat I always give to these numbers, these surveys that are coming out, is that they are still eager to go abroad, and that are we going to see a rebound? We do see that the numbers of high school graduates through international schools, the ones that are most likely to go abroad, are going to be increasing significantly in the next couple of years. So there's hope that we could be seeing a rebound there. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on that one for future reference. But there's the issues of safety are still there. But you do see signs from the China side. Institutionally, they're looking to build partnerships again because they've been absent for 3 or 4 years from the world scene in terms of actively engaging and having visitors. But I think that the light is still on there and possibilities for growth in China. But, certainly rebounding, not back to 2016-17 levels, but certainly there's opportunities that we will see increasing waves of students again coming from behind the Great Wall. So that's all we have for you here on the Roundup for this week of week's edition on November 22nd. Appreciate all of you who have been paying attention through the last half hour or so. Appreciate your subscribing to the podcast if you're listening to the audio-only version, and those watching on repeats on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. I really appreciate you making time for these roundups each week. So until next week, we wish you the very best and have a very happy Thanksgiving.